One trend which I'm sure you'll have seen is that of doctors, dermatologists, and other medical professionals starting beauty brands that they claim create medical-grade skincare. And it sounds impressive, right? After all, this sounds like it must be the good stuff if it was made by the medical community. But is the term medical grade all it's stacked up to be? Should skincare even be medical grade? After all, the beauty industry has a tendency of using terminology that doesn't actually mean an awful lot, but can sound dreadfully impressive. So to uncover the truth once and for all, I decided I wanted us to pick apart this question on today's podcast episode. And who better to join me, of course, than Formula Botanica Education Manager and former beauty blogger Anna Green. So settle in for an episode that will bust yet another fairly controversial myth in the beauty industry. Welcome to Green Beauty Conversations, the podcast that challenges you to think about how you buy, use, make or sell your green beauty formulations. In my weekly episodes, I explore the sustainability of the beauty industry and encourage you to join me in changing the beauty industry for the better. I'm your host, Lorraine Dallmeier. I'm a chartered environmentalist, biologist, and the CEO of award-winning online organic cosmetic formulation school, Formula Botanica. We have thousands and thousands of students in over 190 countries around the world who study with us to become organic beauty formulators and entrepreneurs. Visit our website at formulabotanica.com to try our free online formulation course. And if you want to be the first person to know what's happening in green beauty, make sure you subscribe to this podcast in your favorite podcast app. So in today's episode, I'm joined by Anna Green, Formula Botanica Education Manager, longtime beauty industry expert, and regular guest on the Green Beauty Conversations podcast. Anna has a wealth of experience in understanding beauty brands, trends, cosmetic ingredients, and everything to do with the wider industry. It is always a pleasure and a privilege to have Anna on the podcast with me, so let's get started. Hi Anna, how are you doing today?
Hi Lorraine, I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm really pleased you're back on the podcast for 2024. So we've got a really interesting topic today, which I know is going to cause a little bit of controversy. So we're going to be talking about medical grade skincare, and I know this is something you have quite a lot of opinions about, which is why I'm really thrilled that you're here. So can you start off by explaining what medical grade skincare actually is?
Yes, of course. And you are right. This one isn't without its controversy. I've seen lots and lots of debates about this one online, but this is why we're going to sort of flesh out the details of it on the podcast. So this is a term predominantly used by brands who sell via professionals. So we're talking about estheticians, which is the term used for facialists in the UK, in the US, should I say. So in the US, they're estheticians. In the UK, they're facialists, dermatologists, or even people like plastic surgeons. So sometimes it can also be referred to as clinical skincare or cosmeceutical skincare. And it is a very popular term, more so in the US than in Europe and the rest of the world. But it can be sort of found everywhere, really.
Yeah. Is it actually a thing, though? I mean, is medical grade skincare regulated differently? How does it all work?
Well, this is why it's controversial, because like many things in the skincare industry, it's a marketing term and it's a way of differentiating your brand from someone else's. So, you know, there's no specific regulations around the term medical grade. There are specific regulations around other terms, and we'll delve into that a little bit later on. But essentially, it is entirely made up by the brands using the term. And there has been some fierce debate, as we've sort of alluded to online, around this use of the term medical grade and whether it's helpful for consumers and whether it's actually ethical to sell cosmetics under the term medical grade at all, because cosmetics are regulated, as are drugs, and we'll see a little bit later on sort of the differences.
Interesting. I suppose it's a bit like hypoallergenic, which is another one of those terms that people think is really means something, but actually is more of a marketing term. So why do people claim to make and sell medical grade skincare then?
Well, I hinted at this previously. It's the differentiation. So when you have many different brands available to the consumer, how are you going to differentiate yourself from somebody else? And medical grade as a term sort of carries that element of exclusivity. And actually, when you think about it, when you're using the term medical and you're talking about doctors and dermatologists, there is an authority bias there that is used to sell, because you're associating your products with people who have medical knowledge and who carry a certain level of authority because of that. The method of selling is also very specific, because the brands are dictating and dedicating time and money and resources into training specific professionals. So they're not wanting to be associated with every single cosmetic platform. They're not wanting to be everywhere. They're saying we are exclusive and we're available through who we are considering either medical or skincare professionals. So estheticians would obviously be considered skincare professionals, not medical professionals. So it's a little bit about that exclusivity and that differentiation and that point of difference in terms of where they're sold. There are many, many ranges available online now, though. I think this has shifted a little bit. So once upon a time, it was a lot easier for the brands to say we're only sold through certain medical offices. With obviously the internet exploding, lots and lots of websites available who perhaps are selling products unauthorized even, then this is a lot harder to control. So that exclusivity element is a little bit more woolly, shall we say.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, when you go into Google and you type in medical grade skincare, you just get page after page of all these brands that they themselves are listed under this term. They don't always use it on their website, but often their branding, the wording they use, it's very clever how they've done it. A question I have is, how is medical grade skincare not effectively the same as a pharmaceutical product? Because if it's claiming to have something to do with the world of medicine, then surely it has more sort of healing and curative purposes.
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting question, because many mainstream brands are actually owned by large pharmaceutical companies that have also a drugstore or sort of over-the-counter umbrella to their business. So they often sit within the same companies as so-called medical sort of grade brands, but the medical grade brands obviously have a different price point, a different sort of selling avenue, that kind of thing. Pharmaceutical products are used in the treatment of disease, and so they fall into the category of drugs. And that doesn't mean to say that every product sold in a pharmacy is a pharmaceutical product or a drug, because pharmacies sell a wide variety of cosmetic and over-the-counter products as well. So this is where things can get a little bit grey for the consumer.
That makes perfect sense. And just as a quick refresher for everyone listening, why can't skincare make pharmaceutical claims?
So the legalities vary around the world, but depending on the country in which you're making products in, there are clear distinctions for the most part between a drug, which can have medicinal effects and claim to treat disease, and a cosmetic, which cannot make those claims. It's purely designed to work on the skin. It can improve the look and feel of the skin and the hair, but it is not designed to treat skin conditions, for example. So there is that very clear distinction out there.
We teach this in our courses, of course, as well. And it often comes as a bit of a surprise to people when they enroll with us, because most people who come into this world of natural skincare are often really interested in the concept of skin health. So to then learn that you can't make those healing and curative claims often comes as a little bit of a surprise in the beginning, obviously. What makes a product so-called medical grade, according to the people who then claim to make this type of skincare? What sort of claims are these brands making?
Well, I've sort of pulled together a few different claims that they're making. The first claim I've seen, and this depends from brand to brand, but I pulled three of the most interesting claims that I thought we should look into. Claim number one is that there is a deeper penetration of the products. And this claim makes absolutely no sense from a formulation standpoint at all. So for a few different reasons, in fact. Firstly, there is no difference between the way that a so-called medical grade skincare product is formulated versus a cosmetic. There just isn't. The rules of formulation apply to all. Secondly, there are a few different factors that can affect skin penetration that have nothing to do with how the formula is created. For example, a compromised skin barrier allows for deeper penetration of a product. If you're applying a product to damp skin, that can enhance the penetration. There's just lots of variables here. And the third one, which I find really interesting, is a product's ability to penetrate the skin is just one of many factors to consider when you're thinking about efficacy, because not every product will need to penetrate the skin to be effective. For example, if they are selling a cleanser, it has the job of working on the surface of the skin to cleanse, to remove dirt and debris, and it will not need to penetrate to be effective, but it can still make a visible difference to the skin from its use. So the penetration really didn't make any sense to me when I was looking at it. It is linked a little bit with claim number 2. So claim number 2 is that they claim a higher use of actives, higher levels of actives.
Interesting.
Again, from a formulation standpoint, this doesn't really make much sense because the maximum amount of any given ingredient that can be used in a formula will either be regulated by law in the cases of certain active ingredients, or there's usually guidelines available from the manufacturer of those ingredients, and those guidelines are the same for everybody. What I will say about this claim is that if a medical grade serum is being sold for $300, for example, I'm just making up a figure. Then whoever has formulated that product, they can maybe afford to invest in slightly more exclusive or expensive ingredients. It doesn't, however, mean that they will have. It's not a guarantee, but they have access. Supposedly, if they have higher price point, then hopefully they have access to the best raw materials that money can buy. But it's not a guarantee. So this is where it becomes very, very difficult for a consumer to know where to invest their money. So claim number 3, and this is the one personally that I think has the most weight, is that it's sold only via professionals. So out of the 3 claims, this is the least egregious of the 3, if we're honest. Yes. And I do see a value to brands having a very direct relationship with professionals who can then use their products within a treatment or then retail those products to those same clients. It's a common business model within the industry. And if a brand has invested a significant amount of money into R&D and they have formulas that would benefit from having professionals who can explain the ingredients and can really explain how to get the most out of those formulas to people who are using them, then I think this approach to selling makes perfect sense. But again, it's not exclusive to medical grade skincare because it's widespread within the industry. It's just the type of professionals who are targeted by the brands are different because we're talking sort of more dermatologists, like I say, that authority bias of people who have sort of some kind of medical expertise. So that's just a few of the claims that I've seen that I think are really quite interesting.
That is really interesting. So deeper penetration, higher percentage of actives, and where it's sold potentially through medical professionals. And just as an aside, we've seen tons of estheticians enroll at Formula Botanica over the years, actually. And they go, I've been selling someone else's products all this time, and I quite like them, but I think I can do better. And we've seen so many of them start their own ranges, which I suppose also sort of pops that medical grade skincare bubble a little bit if you can then go out and create your own, and it might actually be even better for your customers. So what sort of actives? I mean, you talked about actives and how we make these, how they sometimes make these claims about higher percentages of actives. What types of actives do we typically see in so-called medical grade skincare?
Well, despite the fact that there's a lot of innovation in the cosmetics industry, there is a set amount of cosmetic ingredients that have sort of been tried and tested, used over the years, and have evidence behind them. And so they are the most commonly and widely used. And again, they're not exclusive to medical grade, but you have things like vitamin A, your sort of retinoid family, you have things like vitamin C, many kinds of antioxidants, ferulic acid, to name a few. But you see the same cosmetic ingredients tending to pop up in most formulas that you sort of see as medical grade or claiming to be medical grade.
Yeah, and all of those words and ingredient names will sound very familiar to you, of course, Anna, because your team has created mini courses on all of them that sit in our membership platform, the Lab for Formulators. So it's interesting how these claims are being made about these actives. And at the same time, we have all these people using those exact same actives in non-medical grade skincare, if that's how we want to refer to it. So yeah, fascinating. So do these so-called medical grade brands then have to have clinical trials done? Because, if you're making medicinal medical claims, then surely you want the data to back that up.
Yeah, so many of the brands who are claiming to be medical grade do have some clinical data behind their formulas. However, this is not a requirement at all. And there are so many brands out there who are also providing this data that do not market themselves as medical grade. So clinical trials are not to be confused with customer satisfaction surveys, which are a way of brands collecting customer impressions of how the product performs for their marketing. Clinical trials have a cost involved. They are much more expensive because these provide third-party data on the actual performance of the products or certain claims that the brands want to make. So they carry a lot more weight. And I think it's fantastic whenever clinical data is available for a product, but it's not essential for somebody to have any kind of claim. Like we said, it's completely unregulated. So nobody's sort of checking to see if they've got clinical data behind it. I would hope that the skincare professionals involved in selling would be asking the brands if they have clinical data, and they would be having that sort of extra level of questioning of the formulas, but it's not essential at all.
So final questions then. On balance, do you think it's worth buying a brand if it claims to be medical grade?
Well, if you have a product that you're currently using that is sold as medical grade, you enjoy it, it's within your budget, then fantastic. I'm not going to tell you not to. But if you're asking my personal opinion, I would never seek out products just because they are medical grade for my own personal use. I do think there is value to seeking advice and support in product choices from a trusted professional, especially when you're investing good money in skincare. So if you're sort of serious about investing money, you want that support. And having somebody who can tailor product recommendations to you in person after assessing your skin can be helpful for some people. But this applies to all products, not just medical grade. And I am very, very happy with my skincare. I use lots of indie brands, lots of natural brands, lots of Formula Botanica graduates. And I have never needed to go and invest in specific medical grade brands. But like I said, I think I understand why certain professionals, such as estheticians, like to work with certain brands to differentiate themselves from what is available elsewhere on the market. But the term medical grade itself, unfortunately, just doesn't carry weight for me.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think we've burst that bubble well and truly. So medical grade skincare is a marketing term. It doesn't necessarily mean that the formulations are significantly different to anything else you'll find out there on the market, and it won't necessarily do anything special for your skin that another brand can't achieve. But if you are currently buying medical grade skincare, as you say, and you absolutely love it, then stick with what you love. But those marketing claims don't necessarily mean an awful lot by the sounds of things.
No, they don't, unfortunately. And just one final point as well, Lorraine, and I took this from the FDA website, which is the Food and Drug Administration in the US. It alludes to the fact that there are plenty of brands who are making drug claims for their cosmetics, and the other way around, that they're sort of bypassing the sale of drugs by alluding to their drug as a cosmetic. So it goes both ways. So there are plenty of people out there breaking the rules in the grey area, sort of marketing their products in a way which isn't how they should be marketed. But unfortunately, it happens.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Well, fascinating topic. Thank you so much for joining me again. Really interesting. Thanks for sharing all of your thoughts and research. We're lovely to have you on the podcast again.
Thank you very much, Lorraine.
See you soon. I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Is medical grade a term that the beauty industry really needs? Tell me what you think. Leave us a comment on our social channels as both the Formula Botanica team and I love hearing from you. And if you want to hear more about some of the topics we covered today, please do delve back into the podcast archives. Go and listen to some of the other podcast episodes where Anna and I have debunked topics that resoundingly need debunking, such as episode 159, in which we looked at the term fossil fuel-free beauty, which, yes, is as utterly ridiculous as it sounds. Or episode 83, in which we talk about so-called waterless beauty, another term that is marketing hype since every consumer product has a water footprint. Or episode 69, in which we picked apart the term biodegradable beauty, which also causes lots of confusion. There's a wealth of information in our old episodes, and I do encourage you to go back and listen to them. Thank you for joining Anna and I for this latest episode of Green Beauty Conversations. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do leave us a 5-star review so that other people can enjoy these conversations too. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever your favourite podcast app is, and stay tuned for the next episode. Follow Formula Botanica at Formula Botanica on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter or LinkedIn. We're everywhere. And come and give me a follow at Lorraine Dallmeier on Instagram. Visit our website at formulabotanica.com and sign up for our free online formulation course today.